to speak? Getting ready to start. There's a sign up pad here, but seeing. Is that you? Are you James? Okay. All right, cool. All right, let's go ahead and get started. At this time, I'd like to call to order the April meeting of the Pawleys Island Town Council and welcome everyone here. The first order of business is public comment. We have a person signed up with a question. Do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, the question looks like, so James, I live on the north end, is, looks like we got a new electric light over there. I'm not quite sure if it's on the island, I think it may be, but they take it out, around dust time, and they just go flying up the beach. I'm really concerned about, somebody, either a child or a dog or somebody getting hit, because you can't hear them. Unfortunately, we had this last year, you're out there to see them take a video. We did that last year. I think we rectified with that particular individual. This appears to be a new one. So I don't know if you catch them on camera. I mean, I can continue to look if I can catch them one of these times to see who's up there. It's just one of the concerns.
James, when you say on the beach, you mean the highway, the road, Myrtle Avenue, or the beach itself?
On the beach.
Okay.
And it's one of these deals where,
Electric bike.
most beaches, I've seen them from the pier. They go to the north end, of course, then I can get my cell phone, because I'm waiting to come back down, so they go on the beach. But he doesn't come down. So it's either he comes back onto the road or he lives up in the north end. I haven't walked up past the gate yet to see if there's an electric light up there. It's fairly new. It's either that or whether it's a renter that comes in. But I think this particular individual has been there a couple of weeks, so it's not somebody who's here on a Monday or one week.
Got it.
Mike, correct me if I'm wrong, isn't there a state law that says you can have electric vehicles as long as it's under 4 cc? Or I'm probably not versed on that. 4 cc, 40 cc?
The ordinance that I would look at would be no motorized vehicles on the beach. We were not allowed to have motorized vehicles on the beach.
But okay. But there's something about electric, is there not?
I don't think they're prohibited from being on the roadway at all. Depending as long as I would probably see if they like fall under the moped ordinance.
Okay.
I'll look at it, though.
And that might be just on roads that I'm thinking versus on the beach.
So we have an ordinance against motorized vehicles on the beach, period. If they're operating under the battery operating required, that would be motorized.
Yeah, what happens sometimes is sometimes they switch off when they get to near people, and so they turn it back on. This gentleman hasn't turned it off at all. I mean, he just, it's the excessive speed.
He's flying,
He was flying. He was flying.
Got it.
because I've not seen it on the south end.
Mike, if you saw that on the beach, would you pull him over? I mean, you pull him over, wouldn't you?
We had a couple of complaints about one last year on the beach and we stopped them and told them.
Is it because they're speeding or is it because they have a motorized vehicle?
Because it's motorized vehicle, we don't have a speed limit on the beach.
There you go. That's a good time to move on.
Well, sure. I can stick one of those little ropes out there and turn it once.
About right here.
You might get in trouble. Let's not do that. We're looking out for you too. All right, let's move on to item 3, approval of the minutes from our last meeting in March. A copy of those minutes are in your packet. Any changes, additions, or motions? I'll make a motion. Second. Motion is second. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. All opposed. All right, item 4, reports and updates. First up is Chief Fanning with our police report.
Just a couple of things on the police report to report, to make you aware of. We had a burglary, I think it was back in December, early January, where surfboards and were taken, and some yard equipment were taken on Scarborough, and John went and he did a lot of investigation. He found a pawn shop up in Horry County that had received the surfboards, and he identified the person who sold them, and we've identified that person. We got an arrest warrant out for them. They live in Horry County, so we're trying to just track them down when we can. It's a little bit outside of our jurisdiction of manpower issues. We just can't shoot up there regularly. So we're hoping that he gets picked up and they let us know. entered into the national crime computer, so if he does get arrested for something else or gets stopped, let us know. And then we had a burglary also, a 380 Myrtle, where they stole two high-end quality chairs, patio furnitures. Well, whoever stole them brought them back and then stole two more.
Just swap them out.
So,
They didn't like the color of the ones they got.
Something I didn't like about them.
yeah, so.
This might need ring.
So we had to list that as a second burglary, but it was same location, and it was rather bizarre, so we don't know what's going on there. I wish I had an answer.
Nothing with the cameras for something like that, or was it no telling when?
So, yeah, it was,
Okay.
it's not, they're not permanent residents. I don't know exactly what happened.
Any questions, more questions for Chief Fanning on that police report? Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it, man. Next up, item 4B, building report. Copy that is in your packet. Ryan, anything to?
No, just typical stuff. I got questions about it. I'm going to do my best, but that time of year, people get their houses ready for the summer.
Any questions for Ryan on the building report? Nope. If not, item 4C, financial report. Copy that is also in your packet.
We're only 3 months in, so there's really not that much activity going on, but then a summary sheet on the front though, to kind of give you a snapshot of where we're at. Makes it a lot easier. Appreciate it.
You see anything that indicates rentals are up this year or not far enough in the year that?
As far as rentals go,
Yeah, that is.
really all we have to go up, we look at, I've got what we've collected so far, and then I also have a column where it says what we've collected this time at the same time last year, and we far exceeded that, so that's promising. Other than that, we don't have much more to go up.
Any other questions for Ryan before we move on? All right, let's move on to item 5. 5A, appointments to boards, commissions, and committees. As the council will recall, we went through the last 2 or 3 months with some vacancies, none really that hurt us, so to speak, but we didn't have anybody to nominate. Fortunately, tonight we do. We've got a nomination for the ATAX committee. We've also got some nominations for the zoning board of appeals. We need to reappoint John Hildreth to the planning commission. So what I'd like to do is just go in order. And first item is to appoint Eddie Wilder to the accommodations tax committee for a 2-year term, which will expire on April 12th, 2024. Rocky, I know you had an opportunity to talk some with Eddie, so if you could just give us a quick overview, Eddie, and we'll vote on it.
I'm sure some of you know Eddie, but to give you a little bit of a background, Eddie's been a long time property owner at Pawleys Island. Actually owned the house for years that's right next door to our house. Really good guy, very successful real estate business in the upstate. Clinton, I think, is where it is. So,
Right back near Columbia, Greenville and all that, right?
yeah. Anyway, he has now bought King's, trying to remember the name of the road. Anyway, it was the large house that had the fire on the beach several years ago. And Eddie and his wife, Renee, bought the house, have done a great job renovating it. They're living here full time now. He loves Pawleys Island and always has. And he kindly, very graciously agreed when I asked him if he would serve on the ATAX committee, and I think he's going to be a great asset to the island. I hope this is only the first of many positions that he chooses.
That's the old Brawley Rose house, right?
Oh, yeah, the old Brawley Rose, exactly, in its new form.
Yeah. Okay, any questions about the appointment? If not, we'll need a motion.
I'm making a motion. Second.
We have a motion to appoint Eddie Wilder to the ATAX committee. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
I
Aye, all opposed. All right, item 2 under 5A is to reappoint John Hildreth to the Planning Commission for a 2-year term, which will expire April 15th, 2024. As you guys know, John has chaired that committee for the last 2 years. That committee stays well-staffed, and I personally am very pleased with the progress they've made over the last couple of years, and commend John and the Planning Commission for their work. I would like to entertain a motion to reappoint him to that position.
I'll make the motion to reappoint John.
Second.
All right, I have a motion and a second to reappoint John Hildreth to the Planning Commission for a 2-year term expiring on April 15th, 2024. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, so the zoning board of appeals had 2 openings, has had, it's important for those openings to be filled because there is an application that it will soon be before the zoning board of appeals. And in order to have a quorum, we needed to fill those 2 positions. As some of you may have seen, I put out an appeal in my latest communication to the town property owners. If anyone was interested in serving, that we needed to fill those 2 spots. We had 7 applicants, fortunately, which Peter Fawcett and Byron New York bubbled to the top of that list. And I think that the other 5 that are not going to have this opportunity, maybe, will certainly serve as a pool of candidates and volunteers, and appreciate everyone that did serve up their names to serve. So you'll be hearing from us down the road because there's always new openings and such. So what I did was I asked Peter Fawcett and Byron York just to provide a little bit of background about themselves, and I'd like to read both of those if I can. From Peter Fawcett, he's has a home property on the south end. He said, my ties to Pawleys Island began in 1989 when my father-in-law purchased a lot after Hurricane Hugo and built on Springs Avenue. I've loved being a part of Pawleys Island and enjoy having my 6 children and now 2 grandchildren spend time on the island each and every summer. After my father-in-law's death in 2010, my wife, Deans Richardson, and I purchased the beach house from the family and spend as much time as we can on Pawleys. I want to get involved for future generations, and I hope I can be of assistance as a community volunteer and business leader. And believe me, he is a business leader in Columbia, and he spends a lot of time down here with his family. So I think he'd be a great asset to the zoning board of appeals. Let's do that one first. I'll entertain a motion or any questions about Peter.
Make a motion to appoint Peter.
All right, motion to appoint Peter Fawcett to the zoning board of appeals for a 3-year term. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed. And then we have Byron York. The next item 4 is to appoint Byron York to the zoning board of appeals for a 3-year term. Byron has a home on 227 Atlantic, which is on the north end. He wrote a brief note that says, I'm originally from Alabama and now live in Washington, D.C. I learned about Pawleys Island through my wife, who has been coming here since she was a baby. And now I've been coming to Pawleys for many years. We love it here and particularly love the traditional houses around the island. Last year, we bought one. I would be happy to be part of protecting the essential nature of Pawleys as it grows in the years ahead. Make the motion.
Second.
A motion is second to appoint Byron York to the zoning board of appeals for a 3-year term. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Yeah.
Aye.
Aye, all opposed. All right, next up, business is item 5B. First reading of ordinance 2022-02 and ordinance amending section 3-2.2 of the town's unified development code related to minimum roof pitch. Ryan, can you just give us a quick overview of BNC, and Ken Leach here is also, he's the chairman of the ARB, and you've done a great job. Appreciate all you're doing and continue to do. So if you want to add to anything that Ryan provides, that would be great.
So what we've seen with most applications we get for the ARB and before the ARB existed was we have a 712 minimum roof pitch, so that's for the main roof, but for the ancillary roofs, for the porches, the wraparound porches, or any dormers, and then outside of the main roof, we allow those to be 412. So everyone has no problem abiding by it, but what they usually submit at first is a ancillary roof that is a 312 pitch. That comes up all the time, over and over. Not an architect, so I immediately understand why that would happen. But talking to David Graham and now talking to all these architects as time goes on, it's usually on top of those area where the ancillary porches are, they like to put windows. And by doing a 312 pitch, they're able to fit the size of the windows they want above those roofs. By going to a 412, it does not allow them enough space to do it. So it's a problem with it. They can make it work, it's not a deal breaker, but that was really the catalyst for going and approving 312 as opposed to 412. Because to the layman, to the naked eye, you would not be able to discern the difference between a 412 and 312. It doesn't affect the overall look. It's really not necessary. So ARB talked about it. They wanted to recommend to the planning commission that they consider making the ancillary roof minimum roof pitch 312. Planning commission took it up. They agreed, and that was brought to you guys last month. And it was talked about and discussed, and the idea was to bring it for first reading today, which is what you have before you.
And this is a loosening of the design requirements.
You could call it, it's loosening in the sense that you can make it a little bit flatter.
Okay.
From a 412 to a 312.
Correct.
What does that mean exactly?
It's.
I mean, I know it's pitch, but I mean, is it
So instead of-
like it drops an inch every 12 inches? That's okay.
Instead of rising 4 inches per foot, it rises, will have to rise 3 to get a 10-foot deep porch, that's 10 or 12-foot deep porch, that's a whole foot difference where the roof ties back into the house, which would make these windows up a foot higher.
Right.
Mhm.
And as Ryan said, it's something you wouldn't be able to discern from the street. Not as far as the same thing. Just the experience of looking at the number of houses that were submitted, where this has become a question mark issue that I think the ARB felt it was, it made a lot of sense, a lot more common sense to do this.
But it's not the main roof, so it's just porch roofs and stuff like that.
We look at porch over the area. If we had a 312 and 412, and you didn't know beforehand, I would say that you would not be able to decipher which one it was.
What is this?
Here it's 12.
No, that one, that porch.
This one is 412.
Oh. That's a good.
And I think it's great that your committee's looking at ways of making the rules make more sense, and make them work for all the homeowners. I think that's an awesome thing, as opposed to just being, stuck on what we've got without really considering the need. So thank you for that.
I agree. Any other thoughts or questions about item 5B? This is the first reading. Obviously, it'll be back in front of us at the May meeting. So we do need to have a vote on it to pass it.
Are there plans waiting now?
No.
Okay.
But there's, there are a few that went with a 312 and 412 got approved, so. Whether they go back to a 312, it's not gonna change the aesthetic of the building, so if they went back to a 312. It would be an issue.
Okay.
So that's up to them.
All right.
Ready for,
Yeah. I'm ready.
I'll make a motion to approve the first reading.
A second.
All right, a motion to approve the first reading of ordinance 2022-02. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. All opposed? All right, item 5C, first reading of ordinance 2022-03. This is also related to the ARB and our ordinances, development code. An ordinance amending Article 12 of the town's Unified Development Code related to Architectural Review Board. Ken, Ryan, you want to give us a quick overview of this one, please?
So this is really better detail what the ARB is looking for. So it's really just the addition of 2 half sentences. The way the ARB ordinance is written, a pre-design meeting was required with zoning administrator and the applicant, but it didn't specify architect, so we're putting in architect. So the applicant's architect has to meet with the zoning administrator. In addition to the other sentence that we're adding, it's not just zoning administrator, but the town's appointed, or the ARB's appointed architect, which is currently David Brown.
You guys see that in your packets where the existing ordinance is updated in red text. It'll show you exactly what changes are being suggested.
I would ask, if you remember when we had that clause that you had to have an architect, and then we changed it to building professional because we had some builders who were designing their own houses. So if we say an architect, now that guy's got to go hire an architect to look at the plan. They can still do the design professional. It's meeting with the architect appointed by the town to represent us. Okay, so is that the way it reads? Okay, an architect appointed by the ARB. I got you. I got you.
that.
All right, I got you.
Well, the property, the applicant would have to pay the architect and or engineer.
Here.
So whoever their design professional is.
No, I meant the David Graham part.
That's what the applicant, it's $800 application fee.
And that covers that. Okay,
And the reason for that is we've had at least one application where they did elected not to, and David, who we brought in to represent us and evaluate the design, hadn't seen a design until it was 11 hours before a meeting, and there were a couple of things that could have been handled better. It caused that application to actually drift into the next month. So by making that review part of what they have to do with Brian, I think we can help with the process for everybody, has a chance to see it before it gets. Well, the case I'm talking about was David Lane, we all know. And he's not an architect or an engineer, but he built 100 houses and he designs them. Is he gonna qualify? In fact, he did meet with the architect. He brought an architect with him? No, he met with David Graham. Because it says there he would have to have an architect or an engineer. Well, he does. He has a plan stamped by an engineer. Okay, he brings his engineer. He accomplished that, but he in fact did meet with David and elected not to follow some of his recommendations, which I think may lead into the next red type. I think I have a copy of it. Question of whether or not you comply with the two mandatory requirements within the ordinance, where you comply with the intent of the ordinance. And there was one approval that was given that technically comply with the mandatory requirements, but missed the mark in terms of what we're hoping to accomplish.
Yep, that's in essence what we're doing here.
Okay.
One housekeeping item in the ordinance draft that I'm looking at, the third whereas clause says May 19th, or excuse me, May 9th, 2022.
Right, so first reading, you don't necessarily have to have it in written form, but I did it just so it's cleaner.
Right.
And there's going to be a public hearing, which would take place on May 9th. So I just wrote it as if what's going to take place.
Got it. Got it. Makes sense. Sorry about that. Okay, what other questions, thoughts, or concerns?
Motion approved.
A motion, a second, to approve the first reading of ordinance 2022-03. Any further discussion? And I just have a question. Was this unanimously approved by the ARB and the planning commission? Unanimously. Okay. All right. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? All right, we're going to move to item 5D, which is a resolution 2022-02, a resolution of the town council, the town of Pawleys Island honoring Police Sergeant Tracy Milligan upon her retirement. I've got the resolution here in front of me, and I'd like to read it. Before I do, I just want to say that I think all of us have had some level of interaction with Tracy, and she's been a delight for the town. I've had some interactions. My kids have had some interactions on golf carts and things of that nature, but she's always handled herself appropriately and professionally. And I'm gonna, unless somebody wants to add some texture to what I just said, I'm gonna read this resolution. If you want to add anything to it, now's the time, and I would love to hear from you. A resolution honoring Sergeant Tracy Milligan. Whereas Tracy Milligan was hired as a police officer for the town of Pawleys Island in March of 2012. And whereas prior to joining Pawleys Island Police Department, Sergeant Milligan served as a police officer with the City of Georgetown Police Department for 8 years and a sergeant with Georgetown County Sheriff's Department for 11 years. And whereas during her 10 years of service, Tracy Milligan has conscientiously and capably served the Pawleys Island Police Department, the town of Pawleys Island, and its citizenry, and has demonstrated the highest principles of community service while exhibiting high moral and ethical standards. And whereas Sergeant Milligan demonstrated sound judgment and decision-making in matters involving the Pawleys Island Police Department, and her integrity, courtesy, and professionalism earned her the respect of the community, the coworkers, and peers. And whereas the Pawleys Island Police Department and the town of Pawleys Island have benefited significantly from the dedicated law enforcement skills and services of Sergeant Milligan. Now therefore be it resolved that the town council does hereby commend and thank Sergeant Tracy Milligan for many years of dedicated and law enforcement service, and especially for her positive contributions to the Pawleys Island Police Department, and extend to her best wishes for a happy and healthy retirement.
You're here.
Here, here. Vote on it. We should pass it.
I'll make a motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to pass the resolution. Anybody else want to add anything to it, experiences or thoughts on this resolution?
It seems strange without her here. I mean, she's been a fixture for quite some time. Particularly, I just recall her during hurricane times, and she was always manning the gate here, and, you know, just no complaints, nothing, just out there getting.
Always had levity. She always had levity.
Yeah, good. Always had something pleasant to say. So I know Mike will miss having her here.
Indeed.
Anything you want to add, Mike?
No, sir, good job.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed. All right, the last item we have on the agenda is a discussion and action to authorize town administrator to sign a contract entering into an agreement with Elko Coastal Consulting. I'll speak to this a little bit. Most everyone knows that flooding is more and more of an issue on the island, whether it's flooding through the drains, coming up on the other side of the road, or whether the king tides and storms are flooding over the banks. Most everyone knows that we did a pilot project right here around Town Hall and cleaned out the drains on the north side of Town Hall, on the south side, and placed backflow preventers in each of those drains. And from every indication that we've seen, are they perfect? Probably not, but they are very, very effective from what we've seen in the floods. One way to go about this, as far as implementing this pilot project throughout the island, is to go one by one, try to get funding from the residents and maybe allocate some funds each year to the town, maybe get DOT to help us. But rather than go that route, it would take forever. So we want to try to pursue some grant money from either the state or federal resources. But it's one thing to go to the state or the federal government and say, hey, we need help. We've done a pilot project, can you give us some money? It's another to get a plan and look holistically at what we've got to do, both from fixing the drains on the entire island and also looking at a longer term solution with overtopping our banks. So in order to get a plan, we've talked to Nicole Elko last week. And Nicole Elko is on the board of the Beach Advocates Group. She's sort of puts together the agendas, brings in speakers. Governor McMaster attends those meetings on an annual basis. Some of us have attended those meetings in the past, and it's very, very resourced to look at not only the beach, but flooding on the islands. And so Nicole has been very, very involved, and she's networked in those circles. So we met with her last week, and we explained what our situation is. And as you might imagine, a lot of other communities have the same issues and problems that we do. And in the last several years, she did a sea level rise adaptation plan for Kiowa and also Folly Beach. And if you read through those studies and the plans that were put together, you would think they were talking about Pawleys Island. So in talking to Nicole, we asked her to put together a proposal for us to help us develop our own adaptation plan And she submitted that end of last week, I believe. So we've had a chance to look at it. A copy of that is in your packet. It's a $12,000 proposal. It includes putting together the plan, and over and above that, there's a component of this adaptation plan where College of Charleston has some resources that can come in and do some elevation studies to look tip to tip of the island and find out exactly where the problem areas are. Now, that would be a pretty expensive thing to do, but it's College of Charleston and it has some resources that want to help communities and they have some funds to do it. And Nicole was trying to pull these resources together to do it on a little bit of a shoestring budget, but get us to the point where we have a plan so that when we go ask for money, and you say, well, what do you want to do? Well, we've looked at it. This is our plan and this is what we want the money for. So, you guys want to add anything to that?
Well, you know, she made it incredibly clear the kind of money that is actually out there available that we could access. But in order to access those plans, as you say, Mayor, you've got to be able to show them a plan. And I think this is an incredibly reasonable cost to get a plan that can go. I mean, she was talking funds in with the B, billions of dollars of available funds for infrastructure and flooding and the like, state and federal. So if we can just get a fraction of a fraction of that, we could probably solve our flooding problems on Pawleys Island.
And I would add to that, that not only is she going to try to get grant money for this, we're going to try to also get grant money to pay for the study as well. So we're not going to just kind of say, well, this is going to cost us $12,000. We want to get that money funded as well, if we can. And she's going to help do that. So she's going to try to fund her own consulting adaptation plan. So one of the other things, just to kind of give you a little more information about things that we're looking at, I would encourage you, if you're interested, to look at ways to kind of mitigate erosion and also help with flooding over banks. There's a concept called living shorelines, and it's not brand new, but it hasn't been around all that long. It's a pretty sophisticated way to prevent erosion and try to stem king tide flooding. It's one of the things that we're going to look at because we feel like we know what to do in fixing some of the king tides that are on the lower scale when they push through the drains and they flood. We've proven that we can fix that. We kind of know what to do. And that would make a big impact on the island if we addressed all of the problem areas. But the bigger, more challenging, long-term, more expensive problem is large, high king tides that push over the banks and flood the roads and take a while to go back out, which we see on certain parts of the island on a regular basis. That's going to be included in this plan. If we're going to go ask for money, we don't want nickel and dime it. We want to ask for appropriate funds to do that. So what questions do y'all have? Ryan, did you want to add anything to that or? Do you...
No, it's Nicole's, many people that know more about coastal issues in the state of South Carolina than Nicole. So we couldn't partner up with a better person to help us out and agree with that.
Does she use any of the studies that we have from like coastal science and stuff like that, or is that just totally unrelated?
Whatever data is available. She has a relationship with coastal science and she has a relationship with pretty much anyone
It does.
And her reach is far beyond South Carolina. She's very active in the National Association of Beach Management. I've worked with her for a few years on the South Carolina Beach Advocates. She's the director. So.
And Ryan's on the board. You're on the board as well, right?
Right. So she's definitely good vouch for her. She knows what she's talking about.
I would offer too, we could easily go out and spend a whole lot more money with a major, big consulting company and end up with nothing better than what she can do for $12,000.
She can leverage some of the work she's already done. It's not to say it's a little bit of a template, because I'm telling you, their issues at Kiowa and Folly Beach are very, very similar. I mean, I didn't read back to back, but I read some of those studies, and it's the same issues that we have.
And have they implemented? I mean, are they working towards?
I mean, really, it's just a tool to have to kind of guide your future endeavors and
Mhm.
first things first, you have to have it in place. That's kind of a starting point. So it's a good place to start and kind of evolve into, whatever ends up needing to be done down the road. And you could use it as a tool to try and get more funding for any opportunity out there. You just need the tools to say, this is what we're gonna do. We've worked on it. Our only hurdle is that we just haven't quite figured out how we're gonna pay for it yet. So it's essential.
And one piece I didn't mention, and by the way, I think when you send out the meeting agenda, you have a link to the Dropbox files. Pretty sure this document is in those folders.
It's in there now. I put it in this morning.
So I'm just, for anybody either watching the meeting or those that are here, this is available on that Dropbox link, or if you want a copy, I'm sure we can get you one. But I did not mention enough. It's important is if we can get these funds approved, these funds are in the budget. It's a matter of saying, let's go spend it. She's looking at starting now, essentially this month, and finishing up in September. So if we can get a plan documented and have it in our front pocket,
So
we start going to get that.
These funds are in the
but
budget?
we talked about it on Friday, so there's 10,000,
10,000,
Yeah.
okay.
but it's 12, so I checked this morning to make sure. So 10,000.
We got more than that in there for the creek, remember? We had some in there for the creek,
Right, so that's in there that has not been.
32,000.
Correct.
Which,
For the study.
yeah, so this would, I don't know if this is. We got 42 set aside, we spent 12. Sounds like a good deal.
Yeah, absolutely.
But you guys decide where to go, so put them in the budget one way or another.
Yes.
Whether we add 2 and still do the creek, or we eliminate the creek and only use 12 out of 42. Either way.
Does anybody have any reservations about this $12,000 for doing this? I can't imagine.
I think it's a no-brainer.
I agree. All right. We'll need a motion to approve Ryan to go and sign the contract.
I'll make the motion that Ryan is authorized to sign the contract with Elko.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for authorizing Ryan to sign a contract entering into the agreement with Elko Consulting. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. All right, comments by council. I have one, but I'm going to wait till you guys go first.
I'm good.
You're good?
I'm just wondering if anybody else, I've had a couple of residents complain to me about golf carts on the roadways. And that maybe the police department, when they notice golf carts driving very slow down the roadways and so forth, maybe ask them to, when a car is coming up behind them, maybe they pull over until the car can get by, whatever.
I think,
I don't know if that's,
I think they're supposed to, aren't they? No,
I don't think so. I don't.
More
think-
common courtesy than law, probably.
you bump them, they'll
Yeah,
move.
so I've just had two different residents and I've noticed it in the past, not on a regular basis, that that's an issue, but I have noticed that on occasion.
What'd you say, Gary?
Is there a minimum speed limit, chief?
Nope.
So you can drive 5 miles an hour down the highway?
Yep.
That guy would be a popular guy, wouldn't
Yeah.
he?
I mean, we have roads that people.
Walk 4 deep,
walk on
yeah.
Bikes next to each other and, there's always somebody blocking the road. And, technically, legally speaking, except for Springs Avenue, Atlantic Avenue, it's totally all line, you're not supposed to pass them. So,
Right.
That's a state law, I mean, that's a state road, so the state law is that you don't have any minimum?
the state manages all that.
I know, but there's no minimum on how slow you can go on a road?
Right.
I mean, the only thing we could do, which I'm not advocating at all, is communicate something to the rental company and put signage out, but nobody wants more signs. I mean, I don't know how you communicate that. Social media, but I don't know. I don't know how you fix that. That's a peeve of mine too. I mean, when somebody's, if I'm on my golf cart, It's like behind me. I always call it.
Yeah.
It's common courtesy. And we talked about this before in one of these meetings. I don't know what you do about it.
I don't know if that's something that's even enforceable.
No, there's no.
I don't think,
regulation.
yeah, and that's what I've told people that have complained to me. I just said, I don't think that's an enforceable issue that our police department can handle.
What else do y'all have? Anything? I was gonna just bring up one thing again, and it's been mentioned before. Mary Nash, I believe, spoke 2 meetings ago. The Tyson property is embarrassing. It's embarrassing. I don't know what we can do about it, but just let me ask you a question. Is that an heirs property? Is there a problem with the family not being able to figure out who owns what, or
I think it's more sentimental reasons. I mean,
not to let it go?
Yeah, I mean, it's where they had their family vacations as children, and their parents have since passed. They don't want to tear it down, but they don't want to put any money into it. They have a house in Litchfield, which they use. But it just sits there. And actually, if you go inside the house, you'd be shocked how well preserved it is. It does not look like the outside. But, you know, other than it being ugly, there's no health safety issue. I mean, there's not, even the flooding, you would think, oh, that thing must be disgusting inside. It's just a concrete slab on the first floor with nothing. If you just remove the, perimeter walls, and make it an elevated structure, that problem is solved. But yeah, it's ugly, no doubt about it. I've talked to them, they've said that they were going to get around to doing it, and then when I met with them about 3 years ago, then we had a hurricane, so kind of give them some leeway. And they met with us and the county building department, kind of go over what needed to be done. And really, there was only one thing that came up on the inspection that was needed to be addressed, and it wasn't like, it's like a rotting pipe or something. But they're never there, and the town could pass like a property maintenance code, which a lot of towns have. Enforcement's a doozy, and the problem is with that is while that property is front and center, it is ugly, but it's really at the front of our mind because it's every time we drive by, it's right there. So everyone sees it, everyone complains about it. I can promise you, I've seen some houses that probably are worse shape than that, or in the same league. They're just tucked back further from the road, and they're hidden by vegetation. So you're gonna be willing to go and start applying that to that house. I don't know how many houses there are, but there's probably a handful that would also have to, go through the same thing.
Fair enough. And maybe embarrassing is too harsh of a word, because if there's difficulties where they can't do it, I mean, you obviously have to be sympathetic to that, but it is so obvious right there that it's an eyesore. It just is. And I wish we could do something about it. That sounds great. I'm happy to talk to them. It may not help, but
we talked to them, and they did explore the idea of selling it about a year and a half ago. Talked to numerous real estate agents that were in talks with the family. I think they just wanted an absurd amount of money. I don't know what it was, but it was like not realistic. So it never went anywhere. So I don't know where that stands currently, but I was optimistic that somebody would purchase it. And
what is a logical action step? Just call the family and talk to them. I've talked one-on-one, that's what I think.
I've talked to them as well.
You have?
Yeah.
So we just leave it alone?
No, talk to them. David Elmer knows how to get that.
Yeah, and I've got some numbers as well.
Okay. I'm willing.
I mean, it could be, the prices have gone up dramatically since they were offering that house for sale several years ago. Maybe it's, value's up now, so.
Okay. I'll follow up then.
Or another thing, like the house, I don't know when the last time we went and saw it, Ryan, but we had some bad weather that it's knocked out windows and that kind of thing, which it might have changed since the last time we went. I don't know when you went last.
it was 3 years ago.
Huh?
It was 3 years ago.
Right?
I noticed the window knocked out today.
Yeah,
It's like water's coming.
it almost looks boarded up. Maybe it's fine inside, but it looks boarded up. Anyway, we don't have to dwell on that any longer, but it is something that I see every day. And I'm sure a lot of other people do. And here we are in another season, which is going to be as busy as it's ever been. And And that's 50% of the people, that's the first thing they see. Wonderful. All right, I'll entertain a motion for adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
What's that?